so excited to have you here today, colleagues, people from around the United States and the world interested in this topic of quality of life measurement and the related topic of positive psychology. I'd like to urge you to contact me anytime via email if you have questions about the QOLI or this new science of happiness and positive psychology. I'm available for workshops, but just informal consultation on the phone would be a wonderful thing. So I want to get you started in this new exciting field. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you about a few other QOLI resources, and QOLI is the acronym for Quality of Life Inventory, that might be helpful to those of you interested in adding the QOLI to your practice. Now, we realize that many of you have attended the first webinar and were interested in learning more about the QOLI tool. For those of you who've just joined this training webinar, you might wish to attend the Positive Psychology webinar as well. Here are some cool websites full of information on the exciting new field of positive psychology, including interviews with leaders in the field. I might just mention also that the QOLI is designed for adults and teens. So I put this slide together so that you could contact the leaders in the field if you want some information on terrific child assessments and positive psychology in schools, which is a burgeoning, very exciting area. This is our agenda for today. Let's get started. Now, the QOLI measures satisfaction with life, and that's sometimes equated with happiness or well-being. It also measures the sweet 16 areas of life that make up overall happiness around the world. It's a research-supported and evidence-based assessment, and it's associated with an evidence-based intervention approach called quality of life therapy, or QOLT, sometimes quality of life therapy and coaching. It's been evaluated as evidence-based by the likes of Ed Diener, who wrote a foreword to my book, Quality of Life Therapy, Marty Seligman, and the article that Ms. Locken kindly shared with you has some additional references. Now, my theory of happiness says that 20 to 50% of your happiness is genetic, so you want to pick your parents carefully. That leaves 50 to 80% of your overall happiness being composed of what I call the sweet 16 areas of life measured by the QOLI. These are items on the quality of life inventory. Excuse me. And here are the sweet 16 in living color, so to speak. Here's a brief listing of them grouped by categories of basic needs, relationships. I call that the holy grail of happiness, very important. Occupations, avocations, surroundings, which include home, neighborhood, and community. There's some very detailed definitions for these in the Quality of Life Inventory instrument, and that they will help you with treatment planning. But here's just a brief listing of the areas. Now, this is a 5-minute test. It's written on a 6th grade reading level to maximize its usability. People who are illiterate have also taken the measure. You can read it to clients that have may have literacy problems. And it's got a great normative sample with very good ethnic diversity, which I think is so important in the world today. Let's talk about how to administer the Quality of Life Inventory. And I just might mention, too, it is a positive psychology tool, being a satisfaction with life test. First off, who should take this thing? Who is using this thing? Well, you can see for yourself from this slide that there are many diverse settings, and the quality of life inventory has worked very well in traditional mental health settings, medical and behavioral medical settings, as well as organizational psychology and coaching settings. So it's proved to be very versatile and was designed with that in mind. You can administer this test individually or in groups. There's no special qualifications needed to administer or interpret the test. This isn't a test of pathology, so most anyone can learn to give it. And here we see a really nice representation of what Judy calls the family of quality of life inventory users. So we see a lot of diversity in terms of professions, including, you might notice the last bullet point there, clients and patients themselves, which I think is kind of exciting to me, because I have clients and patients who monitor their own happiness, just like some patients will monitor their own blood pressure. And this gives the power of handling your health care and your personal growth efforts, keeps that power squarely in the hands of clients and patients who are able to do this kind of thing. Now, how can you introduce the quality to clients? Well, here's a script. You can say this test measures how happy you are compared to others across the United States. You can expect a trinity of 3 benefits if you boost your happiness. Happy people with more meaningful lives are healthier, they have better relationships, and third, they're more successful in work and related pursuits like school and retirement. And this, colleagues, is very important for motivating clients if you want to implement some kind of a positive psychology intervention program to boost their happiness, quality of life, or satisfaction. The third bullet point, the QOLI can help us identify specific areas of happiness and unhappiness so we can quickly identify the best interventions and treatment strategies for you to reach your goals and improve your overall happiness. And colleagues, we're going to see that with some interesting cases in just a second. Now, the QOLI can be used as a tool for assessing baseline positive mental health. Positive health. It provides a picture of positive feelings and experiences, not symptoms. This is ideal for beefing up a traditional assessment because we're measuring well-being and happiness, and traditional assessments measure typically ill-being only. So we're only looking at negative affects like anxiety, depression, anger, and symptoms of mental disorders, etc. This is only half of human experience. So you're missing half if you don't have a well-being measure like the QOLI to supplement your traditional assessments. It's also a tool for treatment or intervention. And we say treatment for people with DSM disorders who have a clinical disorder. We say intervention for coaching clients. That is clients that want to be more successful and happy but don't really have a DSM disorder. Now, adding a positive psychology intervention to an existing treatment can be expected to boost the initial treatment response, acute treatment response to something like medication or psychotherapy. It's also been found to prevent relapse in certain disorders like anxiety and depression that tend to reoccur. So adding a pinch of positive psychology intervention can really boost the effectiveness of your coaching, the coaching or treatment program you're typically using now. The QOLI is also a tool for executive and life coaching. It can document the effectiveness of coaching interventions and help to generate a life list or bucket list of long-term positive goals. It can help you to plan an intervention, which I'm going to show you in a minute, fine-tune your intervention, and measure the outcome. For example, this is a study we've been doing in Iran that's under review at the Journal of Positive Psychology. And we're trying to enhance the quality of life and self-regulation in Muslim women in Iran. And we're very excited about this because we're trying to bring positive psychology to heretofore underserved areas of the world and populations. Here is that study. As I mentioned, the QOLI can also be a tool for laypersons and clients to take and score themselves as part of a assessment program or even personal growth program. You'll see two other areas of application: retirement, aging. If you look at the literature on aging, the number one definition of successful aging is satisfaction with life. Are you satisfied with your life? And that is exactly what the QOLI measures. So it's quite ideal for that population. It's also a tool that can predict success in college. And there's a study in which the QOLI predicted academic retention or dropouts in college 1 to 3 years in advance, which is pretty unusual. It's even been used to build a case for hiring more staff and more resources in terms of space for counselors and therapists in order to meet the need of students who are at risk for dropping out because of low QOLI scores. So that I thought was really impressive and exciting too, because so often we don't have enough resources. We see some other areas of application here. If you look at substance abuse or chemical dependency, it's been used for motivational interviewing purposes. You can ask clients to reflect on how they've hurt or ruined their happiness in the Sweet 16 areas of life. Stephanie O'Malley of Yale pioneered this approach. Now, when you're looking at QOLI results, there's really two key outcome measures that you want to look at. There's an overall quality of life, or happiness or well-being indicator, and then there's something called the weighted satisfaction profile, or I call it the Sweet 16 profile. And they're very easy to understand. Let me show you with a case, and I'll mention too that there's some general areas here of classification that clients will get in terms of scoring. Let's see how it looks though with an actual case. Now, cliff dancing is a case I'm going to tell you about, and it's somebody whose overall quality of life or well-being is in the very low range, which puts them at risk for problems in the trinity of happiness benefits. Clients will see this and they'll say, well, what can I do about it? This satisfaction profile really gives them specific advice on what to do, because it will, or Sweet 16 profile will show them areas of strength where their most cherished needs, goals, and wishes are being fulfilled, but also areas of unhappiness or dissatisfaction where their most cherished needs, goals, and wishes are not being fulfilled. These areas here in the dark side tend to be the targets for intervention in positive psychology. And if we can but move these dark side areas to the bright side, Luke Skywalker, to use a Star Wars analogy, if we can move these specific areas up into an area of satisfaction, then this overall score will also move into the average or high range, which makes the client no longer at risk for difficulties in the trinity of happiness benefits. Let me tell you a little bit about cliff dancing. This is a 62-year-old divorced, shy, civil litigant attorney with no time really for fun, love, or friends. She actually dropped out right after I assessed her quality of life or well-being with the QOLI. I predicted that she might have some difficulties because of her low QOLI score. And sure enough, she came back a few weeks later and reported that she had been sick with cold and the flu, had problems with depression, and problems in getting along with her colleagues at work. So all these areas, these trinity areas of happiness benefits were affected by her very low well-being scores and her unhappiness. The silver lining here was that this improved our therapeutic alliance, where she decided, because she was an engineer and didn't really believe in psychology or counseling or coaching, and she said, maybe there is something to this mumbo jumbo, as she called it, because I had predicted some of the problems that happened to her. Now, we worked very hard applying relationship skills from quality of life therapy and coaching. Got her to the point where she went to a dance to meet men, and it had a raised dance floor, and I couldn't believe this, but she came back to counseling in a cast from her hip to her ankle, telling me that she had fallen off this raised dance floor, which really didn't seem safe to me. But anyway, she did come back to therapy, and we had a really interesting time trying to pick up the pieces. To her credit, she redoubled her efforts, even though she really couldn't walk very well and had to take off work for a few weeks. Interestingly, she went through, there's the toolbox exercises for quality of life therapy associated with the book. There's like 300 pages of exercises. It's like a self-help book in itself. She went through this in detail and really became aware of the approach I was going to use. She took up playing the guitar, which was a wonderful hobby, and got her in touch with the side of her that needed, some self-care and some pleasure and some fun. She said that her number one goal when we got started again was to find a mate, and then number two was to make her job less stressful. In terms of her work, we ended up working on staying with the same firm, but cutting back on trial work, which is very stressful for civil attorneys, and doing more mentoring of new colleagues, which she really wanted to do. She had some generativity needs, and it's a very satisfying thing for all of us at all ages to mentor the next generation, and this is what she did in her firm. In terms of finding a mate, she continued to use these toolbox exercises, relationship skills, helped her to stay optimistic and focused, and to really challenge some negative views of herself that she had before. Her ex-husband used to call her the fat lady at the circus. Her friends all told her that the good men were all dead or unavailable. We, in fact, in a very planned way, using relationship skills, online meeting is what I call it, because it's not really dating, but meeting people and other forms of counseling, were quite successful in helping her to find this mate that she wanted. She ended up actually, as she put it, I picked up a man at a Barnes & Noble bookstore, which is like the cultural center of Waco, and it turned out to be her future husband. And before that happened, she had done pursued other dating avenues, and it really built her confidence as a wonderful person in the dating situation. Now, the cause and solution for your overall score on the QOLI is really the Sweet 16 profile. As I mentioned earlier, the areas of dissatisfaction are the targets of intervention. The areas of satisfaction are strengths to celebrate and to use in trying to achieve personal goals. So again, this very low score can be attributed the very low score can be attributed to these areas of dissatisfaction that will be targets for intervention. And the areas of strength can be used to actually further other life goals that the client has and help them with moving forward in their work. So this is my hooray slide. Cliff Dancing did very well in her therapy and positive psychology coaching and intervention. Evidence-based interventions from my book, Quality of Life Therapy, moved Cliff Dancing into a more meaningful and satisfying life of contentment. You can see here she's in the average range here, no longer at risk for problems in the trinity of happiness benefit, really enjoying her life, thriving and flourishing, which we like to say, because positive psychology is really about having things to look forward to wake up in the morning and to tackle life, and some elan vital, and not just an absence of negative symptoms, but a really positive view on life. And she had it. She really developed that. She moved from the very low range to average. She found a soulmate. She did job enrichment in her work. And she learned a lot of other research-supported coping skills that she could use in her everyday life. Now, how can we interpret a QOLI score, colleagues? Well, there are these 4 categories of, low, very low, average, and high. Taking the low end for a minute, this is often where clients will start. We have a certain set of interpretations associated with that. And this actually was the feedback that Cliff Dancing got. So she was told, you're in the very low area of quality of life. There was some percentile sticker shock in her case as well, because she was in the 20th percentile, which means that 80% of the U.S. population was expressing greater happiness and well-being than she was. I shared with her that she was at risk for problems in the trinity of happiness benefits. Lo and behold, she got depressed and developed other problems in the trinity. And we tell clients, it's very obvious now in this lower, very low range, you're not making steady progress towards your goals. Your most cherished needs, goals, and wishes are not being fulfilled. And this is something that you can work on your own, or I can help you with if that's a service you want to offer. And it can be very exciting. Those of you that don't have a coaching practice but have a clinical practice, it's fun to have both types of clients in your practice, and can be a source of extra income. Another issue for people are how rewarding are their circumstances. And this is something that's really important. We want to do everything we can to make the client's circumstances rewarding and positive. Sometimes this isn't possible, and there may need to be a change in circumstances. Finally, we tell clients scoring in this range, you need to apply some tested techniques for the specific areas of unhappiness in your life in order to boost this overall happiness and meaning score. So this is what we tell clients. We'll just work on these dark side areas and move them to the light side, and that's going to boost your overall happiness. And then at this point, we expect, and this is what happened with Cliff Dancing, you'll move into the higher average range and not be at risk for problems in the trinity of happiness benefits. Now, I would also say that this no client left behind, I'm alluding to the fact here that some clients will actually start in the average range or even the high range at times. And there's not a way to, it's not necessary to turn these clients away, in the sense that you can learn to be even happier and more successful in your life. And that occasionally is the situation that we find ourselves in which case clients will be looking for a higher score within the average or high range, or a movement from average to high. Now, What about intervention? This is a very important area for me, and I know many of you will share this interest. The essence of positive psychology, in this case, is the top grade point here. We want to match the client's therapy or coaching goals with one of the Sweet 16 areas of life. Why? Well, Part 3 of my book has chapters for each area of life, and you simply turn to that chapter to get some research-tested interventions and can apply those to the client's goals in that area of life. So if they have work goals like cliff dancing had, we apply work chapter techniques to the work goals of their life. And there's several numerous randomized controlled trials that have tested this approach of quality of life therapy, this approach to positive psychology, which is it's very comprehensive and it's well tested. There's even several 2 NIH grant-funded studies, National Institute of Health, and one underway right now. Another research-supported approach for surroundings, that is problems with your home, neighborhood, or community, it comes down to 3 simple strategies that I list here: love it, leave it, or fix it. So what we find here is that clients may need to learn to appreciate what they have in their community. This has been a situation for many of my clients. Learn to appreciate the things in their community they're not aware of to make it more attractive and satisfying. They may want to fix the situation. Let's say their house is a mess, and kind of like that show we have here in Waco, the Fixer Upper show you might have seen on cable TV. So there could be a fixer-upper kind of aspect where you try to improve your surroundings of home, neighborhood, or community. And then sometimes the person may elect to leave the situation because it's simply too impoverished and unfulfilling, and no effort to improve the situation has been effective. One definition of depression can be holding on to something that's really dead or unfulfilling, hoping that it's going to change when in fact you've left no stone unturned, but it's just not going to be effective for you or fulfilling. Now, here's another case I thought we could look at. This is Tom in college. Like cliff dancing, he's at risk. This is pre-intervention. And Tom is a university student. He's actually in my book, Quality of Life Therapy. I use him as an example throughout. And again, you see his overall score very low. And indeed, he developed some DSM disorders like major depressive disorder and some other difficulties. We see to his Sweet 16 profile that we have these dark side areas, and again, we want to try to improve these, move them to the bright side in order to make this overall score move to the average or high range. One area with Tom was relationships, and we used some relationship interventions that were very complex but effective. I have a handout in my toolbox related to my book called Relationship Skills. We picked and practiced some of these skills. We did an exercise called Take a Letter to Mom and Dad, in Tom's case, trying to use a principle I call emotional honesty, and to follow what I call the 11th Commandment, which the 11th Commandment for me is, thou shalt be aware. Thou shalt be aware. You know, just about every psychotherapy approach, we want to improve clients' awareness of their hurts, feelings, and wants, especially in relationships. So Tom wrote this letter to his parents. This is not one that he shared initially at all. So it was kind of unexpurgated, so to speak. And his parents really had no time for Tom, so he had a lot of upsetting feelings. His father pursued a medical practice through his early years. His mother was a social climber, joining any kind of a group and trying to network in the wealthy parts of the community while he was growing up. He'd be the last kid picked up at summer camp, like an hour or two later. Very embarrassing and humiliating. When his parents separated, his father told him that he was interested in. He and his mother talked about aborting him when his mother was pregnant. So one of the things that Tom did is to try to build what I call a surrogate family. And you'll see that here, where he tries to find certain friends. Expert friends are people who are in your boat in life, who are very adept at handling the situation. It's a key to successful aging, according to George Valiant, but is applicable to all age ranges. Finding role model friends who you look up to, who challenge you, and who affirm the spark of potential in you. We also looked at his dating situation, and we were successful in finding a serious relationship. And here we went into other techniques. So one of them is something called Favor Bank, where you do small favors for your fiance, girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, spouse, in order to build up a bank account of good feelings so that they then will be glad to help you when you need it. And it's a way to keep the relationship on a positive plane, keep the 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions John Gottman talks about. You can use a lot of these techniques too with platonic friends, which I think is an area we neglect too often in psychology. Very important area of fulfillment. Okay, so Tom's post-intervention and what I call empowerment follow-ups, that he bought the measure and got it himself. You can see one of those here. And again, he's doing really well. Most areas are in the bright side of fulfillment. His most cherished needs, goals, and wishes are being fulfilled. He's moved into the average range of well-being. And just doing really well. And the exciting thing here is that you can scientifically document a positive outcome of well-being or happiness with an evidence-based assessment like the QOLI. Yes, Virginia, we can measure happiness in a scientific way and document our effectiveness, the effectiveness of our efforts. Now, one great intervention I recommend is to add positive goals to your QOLI. That is, for areas that clients care about and may want to work on in coaching or therapy, be sure to identify some goals that they have for these areas, positive goals. Aaron Tim Beck, the author of Cognitive Therapy, has said that these positive goals are essential for any long-term therapeutic success. And I think you'd find other therapists of different ilks and persuasions that would agree with that. And I have a few tips here from what's called the technology of goal setting that you can use with clients. It helps to have very high, challenging, and specific goals. It helps to have goals that are intrinsic or from the heart, not imposed on you from someone else. I find this at Baylor sometimes. We have students, one of my clients, an immigrant student whose parents really want him to be successful as a physician, even though he really doesn't have the interest or aptitude for pre-medical courses. So we're trying to identify some intrinsic goals that he could pursue that capitalize on some of his strengths. It also can help if your goals are supported by friends, even pursued with friends, which I've seen before. I've had sisters and brothers involved in marriage enrichment programs across the country by Skyping or iPhone, watching films or videos and things at the same time on network television sometimes as well across the country through Skype or iPhone. Anyway, the more if you pursue happiness, growth, personal growth efforts with friends, that can really boost your probability of success and make it a lot more fun. Now, in the Pearson Progress Report, we see a graph of multiple administrations of the QOLI. We can watch the overall score go up and down. We can watch the Sweet 16 go up and down. Here's self-esteem. It kind of goes up. It's going up here, which is really important. And it's pretty much staying up there. We want to watch this to see if it goes down. If it goes down, we want to make that, we want to fine-tune our treatment and go back to the area of self-esteem. This particular client I call Giving Tree, and it's from the Shel Silverstein book that some of you may be familiar with. And Giving Tree is kind of tapped out. She's just given birth to a baby with a hole in her heart. And she feels that her husband is withdrawing, he's absent, working 2 jobs, and seems to be spending more time away from home. But her self-esteem and even her love score, an area of love relationship, actually go up with time as she makes progress towards positive goals. She gets help from her mosque, for example, in caring for this infant and getting clothes and things like this. She has a high school education and funds are tight. She also did some relationship work where she confronted her psycho-noxious father, who would call her fat and would discipline her toddler in front of her all the time, and that actually worked. It turned out her dad was suffering from depression. We also did some quality of life therapy, couples therapy, and found out and did this really cool technique called QOLI exchange, where you exchange the QOLI with your partner. And this is in service of knowing your partner's innermost hopes, fears, goals, and desires. Again, something John Gottman and others have talked about. Turns out that Giving Tree finds out that her so-called deadbeat husband is really working more in order to try and help pay the bills of this cardiac impaired child. Play goes up from mosque and social services, time with family and neighbors. Her inner abundance or self-care also improved. She took up scrapbooking and walking with friends at the mall. Helping improved in a wonderful way. Giving Tree called herself a wallflower, rather shy, but she became the face of a new organization, the first in Central Texas, to provide support for families of infants and children with cardiac impairments. So it was really a wonderful thing where she grew at the same time she served the community and her own daughter. There are many other wonderful interventions I'd like to share with you. This one is a research-supported powerhouse, I call it BAT, of 5 happiness habits or muscles that it develops, including blessings or gratitude, self-esteem, self-efficacy, positive reminiscence. If you would be kind enough to return the evaluation which Ms. Locken sent to you for this webinar in order to make me a better teacher, I will send this to you, this BAT exercise. It's a wonderful encapsulated, highly efficient positive psychology intervention. I'll also send a new instrument that other people are not aware of yet called the Positive Psychology Practices Questionnaire, which summarizes all of positive psychology in a list of activities that clients can pick in consultation with you or on their own to try to plug into this amazing new area or subdiscipline of positive psychology. Now, in terms of getting started, let me just suggest some things to you, if I may, colleagues. And in terms of QOLI materials, let me say that you really want to get a starter kit, and you can get it for PC, paper and pencil, or the web. I tend to use the PC or paper and pencil version. I've had some trouble with the web version, but you could try it if you wanted to, and I'm sure Pearson would let you swap it out if you had some difficulty with it. Besides a starter kit, like I like the paper and pencil especially, some kind of starter kit, You also need the QOLI Handbook. This is a step-by-step guide to how to administer and interpret this measure. It also has interventions in it, so I highly recommend that. And I also finally recommend this book that I wrote, Quality of Life Therapy, which is it's been reviewed as one of the few comprehensive step-by-step approaches to positive psych that has hundreds of interventions you can choose from. It has this 300-page online toolbox CD of client exercises. Used to be on a CD that came with the book, but now they put it online at this website you can see down below. And you can personalize these Word documents to a particular client. You can edit them. And you'll see here research-supported intervention for all the Sweet 16 areas of life and some general interventions for any area. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my very kind and generous editor, Judy Zerby, who's going to tell you a little bit about where to find some of this material. Judy?
Oh, thank you, Mike, and I'm so happy that many of you could join us and for sharing your interest in using the QOLI. We hope that after this webinar you know everything that you need to know to lead your clients towards the trinity of benefits, meaning more success, better relationships, and better health. And so you can order these materials by calling our customer service line at the 800 number, and that is one of Mike's favorite ways. But for those who are more electronically connected, you can also order online via our website or hitting the clinical customer support email. And by using the code IE3 as indicated, as a thank you for participating today, you will receive a 10% discount for those items that are ordered within the next 30 days.
Thank you so much, Judy. Now, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to share some of these ideas from this new field of positive psychology and this instrument that's I really designed it to supplement our traditional measures of symptoms and negative affect like anxiety, depression, and anger with well-being. We want to know if our clients are satisfied with their life. And this is not a new idea. Hans Strupp had it. Gene Endicott had it. Other people have had this idea that we've done some research. I've looked at ethicists who've written about the stresses of being a clinical psychologist, licensed professional counselor, coach, school psychologist. One way to learn this approach and to become more effective yourself is to actually apply it to yourself. So let me recommend that you take the QOLI yourself, that you perhaps look at my book yourself and try some of these interventions. It can make you a happier person and help you to build a more meaningful life, and at the same time make you a better coach or therapist in relaying this material to others. There's also some suggestion by some ethicists like Jerry Kuchar that it can reduce the probability or chance of any ethical mistakes you might make in your practice if you also attend to your own personal happiness. To do this, you have to make the determination that happiness and meaning in your life matters, and that you're willing to put some time into this kind of an effort. And I think that this is an issue for clients as well. We also will often start the program looking at, we like to have a floor of self-care I call inner abundance, in which clients have some basic self-care and energy for pursuing a growth program like this on a day-to-day basis. That's another unusual aspect to this approach, that we have this self-care steps as an initial focus. Another unusual thing about the QOLI is that you can actually omit items or Sweet 16 areas that are not important to you. And this, I think, is really important. We want to avoid cookie cutter approaches in which you're supposed to value everything the same as everyone else. And even the scoring of the QOLI reflects this, so that if you say that your children are not important to you, you decided not to have a child, let's say, that can be omitted from the test, and you'll get a better, more accurate score than if it was included in the test or measurement. So I think that that's a positive aspect to the approach. Please, let me just say that I hope that I appreciate you sharing this journey with me today. It would be a great kindness if you sent me the webinar evaluation, and I'll send you those intervention tools that I think can jumpstart your practice in this new exciting field. I wish you well, and I hope that you continue in this journey of learning about positive psychology. Learning is one of the Sweet 16 areas. In fact, people who stay curious and try to learn something new every day tend to be much happier in the long run. So I applaud you for coming today, and I thank you and wish you good luck. Take care. Goodbye.